During the Lantern Festival, Lu Jing snatched my hard-won prize right out of my hands and handed it to his cousin. He then vanished into the crowd, leaving me standing there in absolute shock. It took him over 2 weeks to finally show up and offer an excuse. Wanru has had a really hard time since my aunt passed away. She has no one else to rely on. I can't just ignore her. I bit my tongue, trying to hold back my temper, but finally snapped. But that was the star moon pin. That was supposed to be. He didn't even have the patience to let me finish. A servant rushed in saying his cousin was having heart palpitations, and he bolted. Fine, let him go. A man who couldn't even give me the basic respect of hearing me out. I was done with him. Hey, my beautiful besties, welcome back. A woman stands in freezing wind for 4 hours solving 81 riddles to win a hairpin her fiancé designed for their engagement, and he walks up, pries it out of her frozen fingers, and slides it into another woman's hair. Her response? She walks straight to her grandmother and says, "Find me a better man. Let's go." The Lantern Festival was breathtaking. 10 miles of glowing lanterns hung over the main street, bright as day, looking like an upside-down galaxy. To win that star moon pin, the grand prize of the night, I had stood in the freezing wind for 4 solid hours. I solved 81 ridiculously difficult riddles and racked my brain for the final poetic couplet. Only then did the beaming stall owner hand me the sandalwood box containing the pin. The night wind was like a knife. My fingertips were blue with cold and my hands were shaking, but my heart was on fire. Wow, you're amazing, Zhuàngyuán. You actually solved a riddle that even the royal scholars couldn't crack. A fragile, timid voice drifted over. I turned to see Lu Jing shielding his cousin Su Wanru. From the crowd, she was wearing a breathtaking snow fox cloak. I recognized it immediately. It was the very pelt Jingting had hunted last winter, the one he explicitly promised to make into a cape for me. Now, the white fur framed Wanru's pitiful, flushed little face, the absolute picture of a delicate, helpless flower. Jingting didn't look at my freezing hands. His eyes were locked on the hairpin in my box. His brow slightly furrowed. Cousin Jingting. Wanru tugged at his sleeve, her eyes red. She stared at the pin like a kicked puppy. I heard that pin brings good luck. If someone like me, who has had such a bitter life, wore it, do you think I'd finally have some good fortunes? She bit her lip, tears welling up in her eyes like she was made of glass. Jingting's gaze softened instantly. He instinctively pulled her closer, shielding her from the wind. Then, he looked up at me. His handsome, usually aloof face carried an expression of absolute entitlement. Wanyin, give the pin to Wanru. He didn't even ask. It wasn't a question. My grip tightened on the box, my voice hoarse. Jingting, do you even remember what this pin means, Sister Wanyin? Wanruo suddenly stepped forward and grabbed my wrist. Tears spilled down her cheeks like broken pearls. If I had this kind of luck back then, maybe my parents wouldn't have died. I just want it for peace of mind. You were born at the top of the world. You have everything. Couldn't you just let me have this one piece of luck? Please! What a masterclass in guilt-tripping. I let out a bitter laugh and tried to yank my hand back, but Jingting moved faster. He clamped his hand over mine, with a completely overbearing grip right in front of the bustling festival crowd. He pried my freezing fingers open one by one and pulled the sandalwood box away. "That pin is mine," I yelled, my eyes red with anger, throwing high society etiquette out the window as I reached for it. Jingting took a step back, hiding Wanru perfectly behind him. His eyes were icy. "Wanyin, you seem to have forgotten who paid the artisan to design this pin in the first place. Wanru is an orphan. She needs this luck to soothe her nerves way more than you do. Why are you being so petty with a helpless girl?" The cold wind seemed to pierce straight into my bones. I froze in place, watching him personally slide the star moon pin into Wanruo's hair. I watched her break into a tearful smile, shyly calling him cousin. Then, with his arm half wrapped around her petite shoulders, they turned and disappeared into the sea of people. He just left. He left me standing under the gorgeous festival lights like an absolute joke, my empty palms stinging with the cold half. A month later, the spring chill was still sharp when Lu Jingting finally stepped foot into my family's estate. The heating in the parlor was cozy, and the scent of premium tea filled the air. Jingting sat in the guest chair, sipping his tea with an indifferent expression, acting as casually as if we were discussing the weather. Since my aunt passed, Wanru has had a really tough time. She is new to the capital, and she wakes up crying from nightmares, he said, slowly skimming the tea leaves with his lid. She has no one. I can't just abandon her. What happened at the festival was sudden, and I apologize for leaving you out in the cold. I sat in the head seat, staring at the man through the rising steam of my tea. The Pace and Lu families were old friends. We'd had an unspoken engagement since childhood. I wouldn't say I knew his every secret, but I knew him well. Aloofness was his default setting, sure, but in the past, whenever he messed up, the guilt in his eyes was impossible to hide. When we were kids, if he accidentally broke my kite, he'd stay up all night with red-rimmed eyes, crafting a better one to apologize. If he stepped on my dress, he'd immediately send someone galloping on horseback to the south, just to buy the exact same silk, but now he knew exactly what that star moon pin meant to me, yet he snatched it away to make another woman smile. And this apology, he dragged it out for weeks, and even now it sounded like a rehearsed afterthought. She has no one, so what? I forced down the lump in my throat, my nails digging into my palms. That was the star moon pin, that was the token of our engagement. The pin you designed yourself using your own savings. You told me I was the bright moon and you were the surrounding stars, and we'd never be apart. But he didn't have the patience to let me finish. A servant boy burst into the room, sweating bullets, completely forgetting his manners. Sir, it's terrible. Miss Wanru is having heart palpitations. She can't breathe and she's crying for you. Jingting's face dropped. He slammed his teacup down, spilling scalding water on the mahogany table. He shot up, gave me a rushed, half-hearted bow. Wanru needs me. I'll visit another day. And with that, he swept out of the room, looking at the cooling tea. All the fight suddenly drained out of me. I relaxed my clenched fists. He was a brilliant man. Did he really not see through such basic, manipulative high school level drama? No, he saw it. He just cared about her more, and me. I didn't even have the right to finish a sentence. Let him go. I, Pei Wanyin, refused to beg for the attention of a man who couldn't even hear me out. Honestly, Jingting's blindness and favoritism didn't happen overnight. It started the day Su Wanruo arrived in the capital and slowly poisoned our previously flawless relationship. Last spring we were caught in a sudden downpour during a hike. In the chaos of the thunder, Jingting instinctively grabbed Wanruo and shoved her into the deepest, driest part of a cave. The force of his push sent me stumbling backward into a muddy puddle. The freezing spring rain soaked me to the bone. He looked back, pulled me up, and simply said, "Wanru has a weak constitution. She can't catch a cold. Just tough it out. The carriage will be here soon." I walked back to my family's carriage, shivering and covered in mud. I developed a severe fever and was bedridden for 10 days, coughing up blood. During those 10 days, he didn't visit once. He just sent a servant with some herbs, claiming he was too busy escorting Wanru to all the best doctors in the city to nourish her health. Then there was Valentine's Day last year. The streets were packed. Suddenly, a few spooked horses charged into the crowd, causing a massive stampede. In the panic, I watched with my own eyes as Jingting brushed right past me, sprinting like an arrow toward Wanru to shield her with his body. He didn't even glance back to see if I was about to be trampled to death by the horses or the screaming mob. If my family's guards hadn't risked their lives to protect me, that Valentine's Day would have been the anniversary of my death. When I finally confronted him about it, shaking with leftover trauma, he frowned at me like I was a toddler throwing a tantrum. Wanru is an orphan. Her biggest fear is being abandoned in a crisis. Wanyin, you have your parents, your brothers, and a dozen guards. Why do you have to compete with a helpless girl? Right, as long as Su Wanru was around, I was always the one who had to be sacrificed. He hadn't forgotten his promises to me, he just regretted them. His bright moon had been replaced. So why should I hang myself on this crooked tree, turning into a miserable, bitter exonce? I figured that out. The heavy weight that had been crushing my chest for months completely vanished. Less than an hour after Jingting left my house, I changed into fresh clothes and went straight to my grandmother. During the holidays, my grandmother's best friend, the matriarch of the Xie family, had brought her eldest grandson over Cì Gōng Huā. He was the definition of elegance and brilliance. He had aced the regional exams at 17. If he hadn't been travelling for 3 years to mourn his grandfather, the matchmakers would have broken down his door by now. More importantly, I'd briefly met him at a poetry event. He had spoken to me from behind a privacy screen, and with just a few words, he helped me solve a chess puzzle I'd been stuck on for weeks. He was a true gentleman who knew boundaries and respect. I knelt on the cushion in front of my grandmother and cut straight to the chase. "Grandma, I want to marry into the Xie family. Please make it happen." My grandmother paused, fingering her prayer beads. Her wise eyes studied me in silence. She didn't ask about Jingting, nor did she ask why I changed my mind. She just asked 3 words. "Are you sure?" I looked up, my spine perfectly straight. I will never look back. The daughters of the P family would rather break cleanly than settle for a compromised life. She stared at me for a moment before a proud smile broke across her face, tears glimmering in her eyes. "Good, my Wangyan has grown up. You haven't let cheap romance blind you. I've been noticing that Lu boy losing his mind lately anyway." She immediately sent her most trusted aide to the Xie estate with a formal proposal. A month later, the official matchmakers from the Xie family arrived. They put on an incredibly grand display, giving our family immense face. On the day we exchanged our betrothal documents, my mother pulled me into her private room and dismissed the servants. Her eyes were red with worry. "Wangyan, once these documents are swapped, there's no going back. With our family's status, Lu Jingting could only ever take that cousin of his as a lowly concubine. You're my daughter. I have 100 ways to teach you how to make a concubine's life a living hell. Are you really sure you want to let the Lu boy go?" I squeezed my mother's hands, my eyes completely clear. "Mom, I'd rather marry a cutthroat politician who schemes all day than a hypocrite whose heart is full of another woman. Trapping myself in a walled courtyard, wasting my youth playing petty mind games over a man who isn't worth it. It's beneath me. Who he marries or sleeps with is none of my business anymore. A daughter of the Pei family deserves a wider world, not to drain her life over a man." My mother went quiet. The worry in her eyes faded, replaced by overwhelming pride. She hugged me tight and laughed. "Yes, that's my girl. You know when to let go. Come on. Let's go look at your dowry. I am putting all my best treasures in it. We are going to marry you off in absolute style." Life moved on peacefully. My engagement to Cì Gōng Huā was set, but we agreed to keep it quiet until after he took his final Imperial Exams. Zonde, while reviewing my dowry list, I remembered a ridiculously rare purple jade calligraphy brush I had ordered from the city's top boutique 6 months ago. I had originally commissioned it as a birthday gift for Lu Jingting, but now it felt like the perfect gift for my new fiancé, the upcoming top scholar. I took my maid and my best friend Song Yunji and headed to the boutique. But of course the universe loves testing me. The moment I stepped onto the 2nd floor VIP lounge, I heard a sickeningly sweet, whiny voice that gave me goosebumps. "Cousin, this purple jade brush is so gorgeous. If you used it to write, it would look amazing." Yunji, walking ahead of me, yanked the bead curtain aside and let out a loud scoff. Inside, Lu Jingting was standing with his hands behind his back, smiling fondly as Wanro played with the brush. At the sound of the curtain, they both turned. The boutique manager, who was sweating profusely and wiping his forehead with a rag, saw me and looked like he'd just found his savior. "Miss Pei, thank goodness you're here. I was just trying to explain to Mr. Lu that you paid the deposit for this brush half a year ago." I gave a curt nod, ignoring the couple entirely, and walked straight to the counter. "Pack it up." Wanru instantly dropped the brush like a frightened rabbit. Her eyes went red as she whimpered. "Cousin Jingting, I didn't know it was Sister Wangyan's. I just thought it was pretty." Jingting frowned, quickly stepping to her side, and instantly switched into his condescending lecture mode. "Wangyan, perfect timing. Wanru saw this brush first. You have countless expensive pens in your study, and she has nothing. She just wanted to buy it for me. Do me a favor and let her have it." He said it so casually, as if my constantly stepping aside for her was a law of physics. I glanced at Wan Ruo and perfectly caught the flash of smugness in her eyes. She loved the thrill of stealing things from me. It was her way of compensating for her own insecurities. I laughed out loud, my voice ringing crystal clear in the quiet room. Let her have it. Why? I paid a fortune for this 6 months ago to give to my future husband. Does Mr. Lu expect me to hand over my fiancée to her too? The room went dead silent. Jingting clearly didn't expect me to humiliate him in public. He froze, his face turning red, then pale. Wonyin, what nonsense are you spouting? What future husband? You're embarrassing yourself speaking like this in public. Wanruo covered her mouth and giggled, her voice dripping with thinly veiled gloating. Oh, so Sister Pei and I had the same idea. I wanted to buy it for my cousin too. Since we're both doing it for him, why are you so angry, sister? My best friend Yunji, who had zero filter, finally lost it. She pointed right at Wanruo's face and sneered. Wow, you're buying it for your husband. You're just a houseguest without a title, who gave you the right to call him your husband. The Lu family's morals are truly eye-opening, letting a stray cousin ruin their golden boy's reputation in public. Wanruo acted as if she'd been stabbed. The tears fell on cue, and she swayed weakly behind Jingting. Cousin, look at them. I know I'm low-born and don't deserve you, but my feelings are genuine. Jingting wrapped a protective arm around her and glared at me furiously. Pei Wanyin, enough. What did Wanruo ever do to you that you'd let an outsider humiliate her like this? Are you going to marry her? I asked, looking at him calmly, ignoring his tantrum. Jingting's face darkened, and he looked at me like he was bestowing a massive favor upon me. Not marry. She'll be my concubine. Wanruo has had a hard life, and I promised my aunt I'd protect her. The only way I can keep her safe in the Lu estate is by taking her in, but this won't affect our marriage. He paused, softening his tone, though it still sounded like charity. Don't worry, my family respects the rules. Even though she'll enter the house first, I will never allow an illegitimate firstborn. I'll make sure she stays on birth control T until you marry me and give birth to my rightful heir. Hearing him confidently spew this garbage made my blood run cold, followed by a rush of pure, hilarious vindication. This was the elegant gentleman I'd looked up to for a decade. This was the man who called me his bright moon, who gave him the audacity to think I would ever accept a life where I had to share my husband and play the generous, forgiving wife. Yunji was shaking with rage. Lu Jingting, have you lost your damn mind? Do you know Wan Yin is all ready? I held my hand up to stop her. My wedding was approaching. I didn't want my name dragged through the mud by arguing with trash. I took a step forward, looking down at him like he was a piece of rotting garbage. I kept my voice low, but every word was lethal. Mr. Lu, a concubine is nothing more than a plaything meant to entertain a man. If your dead aunt knew you protected her precious daughter by turning her into a glorified mistress, she'd be rolling in her grave. If you truly loved her, you would send a parade to her door and marry her as your legal official wife. A legal wife doesn't have to drink toxic birth control tea. I took the box brush from the shaking manager and shot a cold look at Wan Ru, whose face had gone completely pale. Your behavior is an insult to my family and a disservice to your beloved cousin. Lu Jingting, you absolutely sicken me. With that, I grabbed Yunji and walked out. I didn't look back, but I knew Jingting was standing there, frozen and livid. The whole charade disgusted me, but it completely severed whatever lingering nostalgia I had left for my childhood friend. Spring deepened, and the city's most prestigious elite poetry gathering was held at the Royal Gardens. Ivrion invited was top-tier high society. Yunji and I arrived early. The grand prize for the calligraphy contest today was an incredibly rare, authentic scroll by a legendary ancient master. As women raised in noble houses, calligraphy was in our blood, and Yunji and I were determined to win it. We had just laid out our ink and paper when a fragile, greedy voice drifted over on the breeze. Cousin, look, it's the legendary scroll. I read about it in a book once. If I could trace it every day, my handwriting would finally be good enough for your grandmother. I didn't even need to look up. Yunji paused her ink grinding, rolled her eyes to the heavens, and muttered, "The Lu family has zero shame left." bringing an unwed mistress to a high society networking event. Does she even deserve to breathe the ink in here? I patted Yunji's hand, telling her to ignore them. I wasn't going to waste my energy on toxic people. I took a deep breath, focused, and picked up my brush. My only real competition in the room was Lu Jingting. He was famously known as the best calligrapher of our generation. But today, he was visibly agitated. Every 2 seconds, he had to stop to comfort the constantly whining Wanru next to him. His final piece looked decent at a glance, but the brushstrokes were completely unhinged. Half an hour later, the royal scholars judged the pieces. I won first place effortlessly. The legendary scroll was mine. Yunji almost jumped for joy. She purposefully raised her voice right next to me. Wow, Wan Yin, another priceless treasure for your dowry. Your future husband. The man who marries the most brilliant girl in the city is going to be so lucky. I smiled, handed her the wooden box containing the scroll, and teased, "Nope, this is for your dowry. I know you've been drooling over this scroll for 3 years. Consider it an early wedding gift." Yunji stood there stunned, then hugged the box, squealing with happiness. As we were laughing, Jingting pushed his way through the crowd, his face like thunder. Wan Yin, a word. This was a first. He actually initiated a conversation with me and left his precious cousin behind. I dropped my smile and looked at him coldly, not moving an inch. What is it, say it here? Sensing the drama, the surrounding nobles immediately slowed their pace and perked up their ears. Jingting spoke, completely ruining the beautiful spring day. Wanru officially moved into my estate, he said, staring at my eyes. His voice carried a weird, desperate bravado, like he was trying to test my reaction. "Oh," I said, barely lifting an eyelid. "And that concerns me, how?" Seeing my deadpan reaction, he somehow convinced himself I was just acting jealous. He sighed, putting on his patient boyfriend voice. "My promise to you hasn't changed. There will be no illegitimate heir in a few days. I will bring formal gifts to your family to apologize and officially propose." He paused, glancing at the scroll in Yunji's arms. He switched back to his entitled tone. "Wanru is having a hard time adjusting. Her status is low, and she cries every night. Once you marry in, you'll be the powerful main wife. And she'll just be a concubine. You should be magnanimous. Give her that scroll as a welcome gift." I looked at him like he was an escaped mental patient. I was so done talking to him, I just turned to leave. "Pei Wan Yin." Jingting lost his temper, ignoring the crowd. He reached out to grab my wrist. "Why are you still throwing this tantrum?" I was ready for it. I violently stepped back like he was a disease. The sudden movement knocked over a nearby tea table, sending porcelain cups crashing to the ground in a loud, sharp shatter. "Lu Jingting, back off," I barked, my eyes lethal. "Don't touch me. Are you trying to ruin my reputation?" The massive commotion instantly drew the eyes of everyone in the garden. Dozens of judgmental stares locked onto him. Jingting's face flushed crimson. He gritted his teeth and hissed, "Wan Yin, stop being so jealous. Didn't your family teach you the virtues of a wife? Every powerful man in this city has concubines. Wanru is docile. Why can't you just tolerate her? If you just bow your head and accept this, I promise you'll be the only 2 women in my house. I won't take anyone else." Watching him act like he was doing me the ultimate favor was truly mind-blowing. I laughed out of sheer anger. My voice was icy and loud enough for everyone in the back row to hear perfectly. "Lu Jingting, I told you clearly before, I am never marrying you. Since I am not marrying you, why on earth would I be jealous of your mistress?" Jingting's eyes flashed with intense pain, struggling to process the rejection. What did you say? Stop saying things you don't mean out of spite." I pointed to the decorative pond next to us, delivering the final blow. "Go look at your own reflection in that water. You want my family's political power, but you can't let go of the ego boost your weak cousin gives you. You are a hypocrite and a selfish coward. Lu Jingting, you sicken me. If you see me on the street, cross to the other side. Don't pollute my eyesight." With that, I turned and walked away. I left him standing alone, soaking in the mocking, disgusted stares of the city's elite. From that day on, the golden boy of the capital had his pristine reputation shattered into dust. I didn't see Lu Jingting for a long time after that. Rumor had it he took his new concubine back to his hometown to lay low and visit the family graves. Good, the air in the city felt a lot cleaner without him. While he was gone, my life was filled with nothing but good news. During the spring Imperial Exams, Shi Yunzhou shocked the judges and took first place in the regional trials. Weeks later, the emperor personally named him the top scholar in the final palace exams. The emperor even praised him, saying, "Brilliant in mind, unmatched in appearance, truly worthy of the title." When the news reached my house, I felt a surge of pride. After all, this was the fiancé I had handpicked myself. On the day of the top scholars parade, I booked the best balcony at the city's top tea house and prepared a basket of freshly picked dew-covered apricot blossoms. The streets were packed, the cheers were deafening. As the parade approached, I pushed open the carved wooden window. My eyes locked onto the handsome man riding the massive stallion. Shi Yunzhou was wearing the official crimson robes, the emperor's ceremonial flower pinned to his dark hair. He was already ridiculously handsome, but the bright red made his cool jade-like features look downright devastating. He sat tall on the horse, a faint smile on his lips, radiating an elegance that had half the girls in the city swooning. As he rode by, windows flew open everywhere. Noble ladies and common girls alike furiously threw silk pouches and flowers at him, making the crowd roar. I leaned against the windowsill, smiling down at him, my heart doing flips I'd never felt before. As if he sensed something, right as he passed my tea house, he looked up through the chaotic crowd. His deep, dark eyes found me perfectly. The moment our eyes met, his stoic expression melted into the softest, most romantic smile. That smile sent the girls down below into a frenzy. Well, I wasn't going to be left out. I picked up the best apricot blossom from my basket and tossed it toward him. It arched gracefully through the air. Yunzhou leaned forward on his horse and caught it perfectly, treating it like it was made of glass. Then, right in front of the royal guards and thousands of screaming fans, he reached up, shoved the emperor's official flower to the side, and pinned my apricot blossom right behind his ear. He looked up at me one more time. The heat and possessiveness in his eyes made my breath hitch. The crowd went absolutely wild. Yunji was shaking my arm so hard she was speaking gibberish. My heart was pounding, my face was burning, and I quickly ducked back behind the window, unable to hide my smile. That evening, as soon as I got home, my mother handed me a beautifully carved box. She said a messenger from the Xie family had just galloped over to deliver it. I opened it. Inside lay the ceremonial flower the emperor had given him. My mother couldn't stop laughing. The parade barely finished, and he didn't even change his clothes before sending this over. He said all his glory belongs to you. Looks like my son-in-law is not only devoted, but he knows exactly how to spoil a wife. I touched the petals of the flower, my chest flooding with warmth. It was the highest honor a man could receive in his life, and he had handed it directly to me without a second thought. In June we were married. Me dowry parade stretched for 10 miles, painting the city red. The wedding music echoed through half the capital. Shi Yunzhou, dressed in his crimson groom's attire, came to pick me up. By the time he passed all my family's traditional hazing tests and reached me, he was slightly out of breath. Through my red bridal veil, I couldn't see his face, but I saw his hand reach out to me. His knuckles were defined, and his fingers were actually trembling slightly. I placed my hand in his, as he led me securely out of my family's gates. Looking at his broad back, I felt incredibly safe, sitting in the swaying bridal palanquin, listening to the cheers outside. I couldn't stop smiling. But suddenly, cutting through the joyful music, I heard a desperate, unhinged scream. "Wonyin, pay Wonyin." I knew that voice. It was dripping with absolute madness. I lifted the corner of my veil and peeked out the window. The crowd was being held back by the Xie family's elite guards. But at the corner of the street, I saw Lu Jingting. I don't know if he had just rushed back from his hometown or what, but he looked like a ghost. His hair was a mess, his eyes were bloodshot. He stared at the massive wedding procession in total disbelief, fighting the guards, screaming my name over and over. He must have truly believed that when I said I wouldn't marry him, I was just throwing a tantrum. It wasn't till today, seeing the 10 miles of red and watching me ride in another man's carriage, that the reality finally hit him. He had lost me forever. Too bad he couldn't even take a step toward me, because clinging desperately to his leg was a woman. Zhuàngyuán, she was wearing an old faded dress, her hair unkempt. She looked like a street beggar, yanking on his robes and shrieking, "Cousin, you promised to take care of me forever. You can't go, she is marrying someone else. If you don't care about your dignity, at least think about the Lu family's face." Seeing the two people who had once caused me so much pain acting like this on my wedding day didn't even make my heart skip a beat. It was just a hilarious, pathetic comedy sketch. I dropped the curtain and let the palanquin carry me forward, leaving them to drown in the dust of the past. Married life was better than I ever could have imagined. Behind closed doors, Cì Gōng Huā dropped his cool exterior and gave me all his warmth and affection. My mother-in-law was sweet and never forced me to do toxic traditional chores, and his grandmother treated me like her own flesh and blood. I was thriving until the 3rd day after the wedding, when a newlywed couple traditionally visits the bride's family. I never expected Lu Jing to be this shameless. Using his family's old ties, he crashed the banquet. Worse, he bribed a servant to corner me by the rock garden, while Yunzhou was distracted drinking with my brothers. "Wang, do you really have nothing to say to me?" In just a few months, he had withered away. His elegant posture was gone, replaced by a hollow-cheeked, paranoid obsession. If I had a choice, I wouldn't waste a single syllable on this psycho, but to stop him from haunting me like a parasite, I stopped and looked at him coldly. "I am a married woman. Unless you brought a wedding gift, back off." Jingting clenched his fists, the veins popping on the back of his hands. He gritted his teeth and accused, "I told you before I left town that I was going to propose to you when I got back. How could you be so unfaithful? You married Cì Gōng Huā the second my back was turned. Were you sleeping with him this whole time?" Hearing his vile, hypocritical projection, I actually laughed in his face. "Lu Jingting, do you think every man in the world is as comfortable sneaking around in the dark as you are? The Xia family proposed officially, with full honors. And let's get one thing straight. I never ever promised to wait for you." I dodged his hand as he tried to grab me, looking at him like he was an insect. "I told you at the poetry gathering, you disgust me." Pain flashed in his eyes, and to my shock, his knees gave out. He dropped to the dirt and started begging. "Wang, I know I was wrong. If you are mad, I'll change, I told you. Wanru is just a concubine. She has no one, she has no home. Why can't you just be the bigger person? If you divorce him right now, I will marry you with a grand parade." Listening to this completely unhinged delusion wiped out whatever tiny shred of pity I had left. "Shut up," I snapped. "Listen to me very carefully. 3 things. 1. Wanru is your cousin, not mine. I have 0 obligation to pity her. 2. Her miserable life is not my family's fault. I don't owe her any compensation, and I certainly don't owe her a shared husband. 3. Since you love her so much and prioritize her over everyone, why didn't you just marry her legally? Let's be honest, you wanted the ego boost of her acting like a helpless victim who worships you, and you wanted the massive political power my family brings. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too. You are a selfish, pathetic hypocrite, and looking at you makes me physically sick." I ripped away his self-righteous mask and exposed his ugly, calculating core to the sunlight, his face drained of color. He scrambled backward, sitting in the dirt, completely speechless. Right then, Wanru's whiny, panicked voice echoed from nearby. Jingting snapped out of his trance. He stumbled to his feet just as she ran over to drag him away. Before leaving, he glared at me with pure, twisted hatred. "Fine, have it your way, Wang. Since you are so heartless, I will give every ounce of love I promised you to Wanru. You will regret this." What a lunatic! Who on earth wanted his toxic, calculating love anyway? I rolled my eyes and turned around, only to bump straight into a warm chest that smelled faintly of sandalwood. Cì Gōng Huā had been standing a few feet away. His dark eyes were fixed on me quietly. My heart jumped, and I instinctively started to explain. "Husband, he and I." He didn't ask. He just reached out, took my hand, and gently rubbed his thumb over my knuckles, warming my cold fingers. He asked softly, "What were you thinking about? You were frowning so hard." Looking into his understanding eyes, all my tension melted. I blurted out, "I was thinking that the actors at the theatre don't change faces nearly as fast as he does." Yunzhou blinked, then let out a low, rumbling laugh that vibrated against his chest. He squeezed my hand tighter, his eyes full of adoration. "If my wife likes watching face-changing shows so much, I'll rent out the tea house tomorrow and hire the best troupe for you." The banquet lasted until sunset. Yunzhou handled my father and brother's aggressive testing flawlessly. Instead of getting annoyed, he smiled and took every penalty drink they threw at him. Seeing the deep satisfaction in my parents' eyes, I knew I had made the best decision of my life. When the moon rose, we finally headed back to the Xi estate. Inside the dimly lit carriage, Yunzhou, slightly tipsy, pulled me into his arms and played with my fingers. He asked me if I was tired, if I had fun, but didn't mention a single word about the ridiculous drama by the rock garden. The more he protected my feelings like this, the softer my heart felt. That night, after we washed up, I decided to clear the air. In a marriage, secrets breed resentment. "Husband, you didn't ask me today about the man by the garden," I murmured, tracing the collar of his robe. Yunzhou stopped stroking my hair. He looked down at me, the hazy drunkenness in his eyes instantly sharpening into total clarity. His voice was gentle but firm. "If you want to tell me, I'll listen. If you don't, I will never ask, Zhuàngyuán. I trust you the same way I trust myself." That sentence landed heavy on my heart, completely erasing any remaining anxiety. I looked up at him in the candlelight and told him the whole absurd saga of Lu Jingting. His name is Lu Jingting. I used to think I'd marry him, but after his cousin arrived, he abandoned me in danger over and over, forcing me to step aside for her. For a while, I even wondered if I wasn't good enough or not gentle enough to keep him. Yunzhou's hand froze. His breathing grew heavy. Suddenly, he wrapped his arms around me, pulling me so tight it felt like he was trying to fuse us together. I hugged his waist, burying my face in his neck, and whispered. But I finally woke up. I wasn't the problem. He was a greedy, shameless coward. He didn't deserve my pride, and he didn't deserve my family. Once I realized that, the first person I thought of was you. After you helped me with that chess game, I couldn't forget you. So I was the one who begged my grandmother to send the proposal to your house. Yunzhou went completely rigid. He pulled back slightly, cupping my face. His eyes were blazing with unhidden ecstasy and overwhelming passion. "What did you say you asked for me?" I smiled through teary eyes and nodded. "Yes, I only wanted the best." His kiss came crashing down, intense and breathless. It was almost punishing in its hunger, yet so incredibly tender, as if he was trying to make up for all the years we had missed. Out of the corner of my eye, the candle flickered and burned out, leaving us to the long, beautiful night. Life after the wedding was a dream, between attending high society parties, watching plays and shopping. The noblewoman of the city treated me like royalty. Because of this, I had a front row seat to the juiciest scandal of the year. By early autumn, a wild rumor exploded across the capital. Word on the street was that the once untouchable golden boy Lu Jingting had suffered severe internal damage and was completely sterile. The rumors were incredibly detailed down to the sketchy back alley clinics he visited and the illegal, aggressive tonics he was buying. Storytellers in the tea houses turned it into a daily soap opera. Some people privately asked if I was the one spreading it out of spite. I just sipped my tea and smiled calmly. My husband is the top scholar, brilliant, gorgeous, and treats me like a queen. Do I look like I have the time to care about another family's trash? I honestly assumed the rumor was started by a political rival, until half a month later, when Jingting barged into my private box at the theatre, completely abandoning all dignity. In just a few months, he looked like a walking corpse. His eyes were sunken, his cheekbones jutted out, and his expensive clothes hung off his skeletal frame like a scarecrow. He locked onto me, his eyes bloodshot, his voice sounding like a scraping ghost. "The rumors. Did you start them? Will you only be happy when I am completely destroyed?" Yóujiē, who was watching the play with me, instantly stepped in front of me like a protective mama bear. Are you insane? You can't perform in the bedroom and you think that is Zhuàngyuán's fault. I stepped back in disgust, covering my nose with a handkerchief. I am not that bored, Mr. Lu. If you want answers, go ask your precious cousin. At the word cousin, Jingting let out a horrific, broken laugh. Tears streamed down his hollow cheeks. It was pathetic and terrifying. Why, Zhuàngyuán, tell me why. I gave her everything, and this is how it ends. He pounded his fists against the doorframe like a madman. She had a hard life, so I fought my family to take her in. I gave her control of the household finances. Aside from the official title of wife, I gave her everything. Why did she drug my medicine? She ruined me. She destroyed my entire life. I froze for a second, then almost burst out laughing. It turned out that my parting insult, a legal wife doesn't have to drink birth control tea, had actually planted a seed of absolute paranoia in Wanruo's brain. Terrified of being an easily disposable concubine with no children, she grew resentful every time she was forced to drink the tea. So, acting sweet and docile on the outside, she bribed the kitchen staff to secretly slip sterilization drugs into Jingting's daily health tonics. Her twisted logic: if he was sterile, he could never have legitimate children with any future wife, meaning he would have to rely on her and stay with her forever. These two toxic, manipulative psychos truly deserved each other. It was a match made in hell. Zhuàngyuán, I regret it. Jingting's knees buckled, and he collapsed to the floor. He reached out a skeletal hand toward my skirt. I don't want her anymore. I'll throw her out. Please come back to me. I don't care that you are married. Just get a divorce and we can start over. He was completely, irrevocably insane. Just as I narrowed my eyes and reached for a hairpin to stab his hand, the door to the box was kicked open with a massive crash, sending splinters flying. Zì Yunzhou walked in, radiating pure ice. He didn't even look at Jingting. He walked straight to my side, pulled me behind him, and then lifted a long leg, kicking Jingting squarely in the chest. Jingting flew backward like a broken doll, slamming into the wall and coughing up blood. Yunzhou looked down at the pathetic mess on the floor, his eyes cold enough to freeze hell over. Know your place, Lu. If you ever come within 10 feet of my wife again, I will erase the Lu family from this city. On the carriage ride home, Yunzhou held me tightly. He was usually so gentle, but the lethal energy was still radiating off him. He rested his chin on the top of my head and muttered, Zhuàngyuán, I am the one who fueled those rumors. I raised an eyebrow in surprise and looked up at him. Oh, you did that? Yunzhou's ears turned slightly red. He buried his face in my neck, sounding almost like a puppy asking for praise. He bullied you for years. I just happened to uncover the mess in his house, so I paid a few storytellers to spice up the details. Do you think I am too ruthless? Seeing him act so cautious, my heart melted. I laughed softly, cupped his face, and kissed him hard on the lips. Ruthless. When dealing with garbage, you have to be ruthless. You did amazing, husband. Yunzhou's rumors were the final nail in the Lu family's coffin. High society cared about nothing more than reputation. The Lu family's scandals. A concubine running the house, a sterile heir, where massive taboos, political rivals pounced, bombarding the emperor with petitions, calling the Lu family corrupt and immoral. Jingting's father was publicly reprimanded by the emperor, stripped of his government posts and placed under house arrest. As for Jingting, already unstable from his condition, he completely lost his mind when he realized Wanruo's drugs had not only ruined his body but destroyed his entire family legacy. According to the police reports that leaked later, Jingting stormed into the house that night to beat Wanruo to death. Fighting for her life, Wanruo grabbed a solid brass incense burner and smashed it into his skull. Jingting didn't die, but he suffered severe brain damage. He was left completely paralyzed, unable to speak, forced to spend the rest of his life staring at the ceiling, needing servants to feed him and clean up his waste. As for Wanru, the Lu family dragged her to the authorities for attempting to murder the head of the household. Under the law, a concubine attacking her master was a severe crime. She was sentenced to exile in the furthest, most brutal borderlands. On the long march there, starved, freezing, and frequently beaten by the guards, she fell gravely ill. She died on a snowy night on the side of the road, perishing in the wilderness, her name forgotten, without even a straw mat to bury her in. The names of the two people who had once caused me so much grief faded from the capital's gossip, leaving no trace behind. Time passed, and the seasons turned. In the spring, we rode horses through the royal gardens. In the summer, we played the lute at the mountain retreats. In autumn, we watched the leaves turn gold, and in winter, we drank hot tea by the fire while the snow fell. It was the Lantern Festival once again. The main street was a sea of light and laughter. I was holding a glowing glass rabbit lantern I'd just won from a riddle stand. I turned back to look at Yóujiē, who was standing under the dim lights, watching me with a soft smile. Over the past 3 years, every piece of jewelry I wore, from my hairpins to my earrings, had been custom designed by him. He had held my hand and walked with me through every beautiful spot in the city. Looking at his handsome, gentle face, I finally understood what he had been doing. This brilliant, deeply devoted man had used all his time and patience to quietly, systematically overwrite every bad memory I had from the past decade. Now, whenever I looked at a sky full of lanterns or walked down a bustling festival street, I no longer thought of the man who cruelly stole my hairpin. All I saw was Yóujiē, looking at me like I was his entire world. "Husband," I said, walking briskly over to him, my cheeks flushed pink from the lights. His eyes were full of indulgence. He naturally reached out, adjusting the collar of my fur cloak to keep the wind out, before wrapping his large, warm hand around mine. "Thank you," I said, looking right into his eyes. "Thank you for catching me when I finally woke up and fell off that cliff." Yóujiē let out a low, rich laugh. He pulled me gently, lantern and all, straight into his embrace, surrounded by the noisy festival. His voice was crystal clear right by my ear, echoing straight into my soul. "Zhuàngyuán, I am the one who should be thanking you. Thank you for throwing that apricot blossom to me." He had whispered to me once that years ago, before he left the city to travel, he had caught a fleeting glimpse of me outside the city gates. The eldest daughter of the Pai family, riding a red horse, laughing brightly, proud and free. From that moment on, that smile became the moonlight he couldn't get out of his head. Thank God his moonlight was never permanently blocked by the clouds, and eventually lit up the rest of his life. The night wind blew, and the lanterns swayed. Under a sky exploding with fireworks, he leaned down and kissed my forehead with absolute reverence. It was perfect. We would spend the rest of our lives fiercely, clearly, and completely obsessed with each other. The moment that wrecked me was the apricot blossom at the parade. Because let me explain what Yóujiē actually did. The emperor gives the top scholar a ceremonial flower, the highest academic honor in the entire empire. It is not just a flower. It is proof that you are the most brilliant mind of your generation. Yóujiē caught Zhuàngyuán's blossom mid-air, shoved the emperor's flower to the side, and pinned hers behind his ear instead. In front of thousands of people, in front of the royal guard, he looked up at her and chose her over the most prestigious symbol of his own achievement. And then, he sent the emperor's flower to her house before he even changed his clothes, with a message, "All my glory belongs to you." That man understood something Lu Jing never could. Love isn't about what you take from someone. It is about what... Today I want to talk about the top scholars parade, Yóujiē, because that scene is one of the most culturally loaded romantic moments in Chinese storytelling, and I need you to understand why every girl in that crowd was losing her mind. The imperial examination system was the backbone of social mobility in ancient China. Unlike Europe, where your family name determined your future, China had a merit-based exam system that, in theory, allowed any man, regardless of birth, to rise to the highest levels of government through pure intellectual brilliance. The final stage was the palace exam, conducted in front of the emperor himself. The top scorer was named Zhuàngyuán, the top scholar, and it was considered the single greatest individual achievement a person could earn. We're talking about beating tens of thousands of candidates across the entire empire. Only one person won this title per exam, and then came the parade. The top scholar was given a magnificent horse, dressed in official crimson robes, and paraded through the capital's main avenue. The emperor personally placed a ceremonial flower called Ifei Sifei Jifei in the scholar's hair as a symbol of imperial favor. Now here is where it gets romantic. The parade was one of the only occasions in imperial China where unmarried women from noble families could openly observe a man in public without violating social propriety. Windows would fly open. Silk pouches and flowers would rain down. It was essentially the closest thing ancient China had to a red carpet event, and the top scholar was the biggest celebrity of the year. When a woman threw a flower and the scholar caught it, that was a massive public signal of mutual interest. It was the ancient equivalent of being asked to dance at a Bridgerton ball, except witnessed by the entire capital instead of one ballroom. For Yunzhou to catch Wanyin's blossom, remove the emperor's flower, and pin hers in its place was basically announcing to 10,000 people, "I don't care about imperial glory. This woman is my real prize." For my Western girlies, imagine the hottest duke in Bridgerton winning the season's most prestigious honor, riding through London in a royal carriage, and the queen herself pins a diamond brooch on his chest. Then he looks up at your window, catches the rose you threw, rips off the queen's brooch, and tucks your flower into his lapel instead, in front of the entire ton. That is what Yunzhou did. He chose her over the emperor's symbol publicly, irreversibly, and he didn't hesitate for a single second. If you want to review today's cultural tea, all the aesthetic notes are in the description box below. And queens, that moment when Yunzhou said thank you for throwing that apricot blossom to me, and we learn he'd been carrying the image of her on a red horse since before he left the city. He loved her first. He just waited until she was ready. Has anyone ever loved you that patiently? Tell me in the comments. Love you all. See you next time. My brilliant blossom-throwing queens.